So, I've come on here many times and read what other people have had to say on DeviantArt and other places when it came to the Sonic IDW books or even the Archie books and all that. But one thing that CrystalMaiden 77 said in her most recent upload, now I don't know if this is something she did a couple of years ago, if not recently, but she basically brought up something that when I read this, after I read this, and as I was reading it, I should say, it got me really thinking that, she has a point. I mean, for someone that's, catching up with IDW, IDW Sonic, and looking at some of the things that goes on in the story, and then I read what she has to say here, it really gets me thinking that, there are similarities. And what she was talking about, as I drink me some coffee here, and I do apologize if I seemingly pause a little bit or seem to freeze. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say because I do these videos unscripted. But like I said, it got me thinking, that she has a point. And what she did recently, or uploaded recently, and again, I don't know if she wrote this down, a year ago or not, or she did it recently. But CrystalMaiden 77 brought up the fact that what she seems to notice in a lot of the IDW stories that Ian Flynn and I think even Stanley, but mostly Ian Flynn has, wrote for the IDW book, is there seems to be a lot of the Ken Penders concepts that have been included in some shape, form, or fashion. And again, as I read what she had to put here on here, basically, as well as reading the books myself, catching up with them and getting an idea of what a story is and everything. It just really is, I guess you could say mind-blowing to an extent that, what she points out here is pretty much true. I mean, for example, this is what she says, and I quote. This is basically the article I copied and pasted onto Microsoft Word and printed out of what she said, and I quote, characters can, and she capitalizes the word can, C-A-N, characters can change their designs after all, but first, Penders concept number 1. And this is what she says with the first Penders concept. Knuckles has a psychic connection with the Master Emerald and can feel when it's in danger, like Locke did in issue 151, and he could feel when his connection with it was cut off, like Locke would when Fentivius took it over. And she basically gave an example from the IDW book where Knuckles suddenly had this spasm, like this hemorrhage, if you will, brain hemorrhage, or migraine, and Amy was wondering what was wrong, and he had to explain it was a connection with the Master Emerald, and the fact that he, felt that it was in danger, something was wrong. Then they showed another panel with Sonic asking him if he felt anything, and he says, "No, I can't feel anything." So apparently, what CrystalMaiden's getting at here is this is the same kind of situation that Locke, L-O-C-K-E, Knuckles' father, in the Archie books. This is basically the same kind of connection he had with the Emerald there that we're now seeing here. So is there a coincidence with that concept being added? We don't know. Another concept she brings up is there's a portal to another dimension that ends up acting like a black hole sucking people towards it, like the portal to the zone of silence. And again, CrystalMaiden put up an image, and I'll provide a link to the actual article. You guys can see it yourself to see what I'm talking about. But she actually put up an image showing Robotnik and Snively in the past being sucked into what is basically the zone of silence, or as we came to know it at first through Sonic Sat-AM, the Void, that just appeared out of nowhere in the laboratory of Dr. Robotnik. And basically what she's looking at here is we get something similar in IDW Sonic that seems identical to that. So is that a possibility? Who knows? Is that a coincidence? We don't know. Because again, the Zone of Silence is based off the Void. And the Void was a Satayam Ben-Hurst creation. So, kind of, again, coincidence, ironicness, we don't know. The other concept, Ken Penders' concept that she pointed out, number 3, Chaos Emerald Siphon. Zavik powered up with a device with the emerald put in it, because it drained some of the emerald's power and put it into him. Dimitri became Urajak with a device that also taken power from Chaos Emeralds, the Chaos Siphon. Different history or not, they do the same thing. So she's basically pointing out when Zavik took the Master Emerald, at least one of them, placed it into this device that powered him up into giant size, basically making him like the Urajak of that story, or at least the Overlord, Super Mega Kaiju Zavak for that time, just like Dimitri had become Urajak by doing the same thing. And she says even though it's a different history or not, the devices do the same thing, period. They basically power up whoever's using them to super mega unfathomable godlike levels. Now continuing on, she says, and I quote, made much more obvious when Tails outright called Zavek and the others power-up chess devices the Chaos Emerald Siphon. I thought they weren't allowed to use Penders' concepts. And that is a point. That is a point taken. Now Penders himself has come out and said that he has basically put it out on the table now that he's willing to work, with anybody like IDW and any other Sonic media to allow the characters to be showcased. His characters, that is, as part of that media. I'm assuming what some say, basically, from himself, as a part of the agreement. But we'll see. She continues to say this, and I quote, here's a mandate even IDW broke. The main characters can, and she capitalizes the word can once more, change the designs according to context. And this is where she goes into honorable mentions, as she calls it. And this is what she says. Honorable mentions? She questions it. She puts a question mark after the word, or the two words. Honorable mentions? Issue 3. Does it count as breaking a mandate that Sonic technically sheds tears in issue 3, even if suppressing laughter? What happened to, quote, Sonic can't cry? If it's not really the rule, though, the rule supposedly is that Sonic's not allowed to get too emotional. He shed a tear in Sonic Unleashed by saying "Run, Chip," when he was lying on the ground after losing his werehog form. And that was allowed. But it should be given an honorable mention, since some people think Sonic's not allowed to shed tears anymore, which is a mandate that Sega put out during the Archie run, that Sonic couldn't shed tears, and this is why basically we didn't see him shed many tears in this, if at all, even though it was indicated. We didn't see him shed many tears in season 2 of Sonic Satayam, because of the fact that it was something Sega didn't want to happen, even though, let's say, at the end of Spy Hog, after he hugged his Uncle Chuck goodbye and then ran off towards the ship that was going to take him and Bunny and Sally back to Knothole, you can kind of see like he was on the verge of it. So I don't know whether or not they eased up on that mandate, because according to Crystal, we see that in Sonic Unleashed, or it's just something that Ian Flynn and Evan Stanley and even the artist feel like, okay, if we put this in here, they're not going to really say anything because it's not technically him crying and all that. So I don't know. Sorry about that. Phone call said spam on there. I don't know what that is. It would I'm expecting something hopefully from EDD, whether it's, you know, getting my payment tomorrow or getting them calling. But if they're calling, it should say something like EDD, right? I have to look up the number just in case. But anyway, getting back on topic here. Getting back on topic, basically, like I said, I don't know if they eased up or anything on the ruling, because, you know, they didn't want Sonic to look, you know, basically weak or anything if he's shedding tears. But if he's shedding a tear in his after he loses his Werehog form in Sonic Unleashed, you know, makes you wonder. But we'll see. Maybe they eased up, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Can't really say. The other honorable mention here is from issue 10. And she says, I've read that there was a mandate against using Metal Overlord. Either someone wasn't paying attention or that mandate was made up. Maybe to try to make him reusing Metal Overlord look impressive after the fact, because he almost didn't get to use him, but he found a way. Let me reread that, as I got a lot of messages coming up here. Let me reread that. This is the other honorable mention from issue 10, and I quote, CrystalMaiden 77. I've read that there was a mandate against using Metal Overlord. Either someone wasn't paying attention or that mandate was made up. Maybe to try to make him reusing Metal Overlord look impressive after the fact, because he almost didn't get to use him, but he found a way. And again, she shows a panel that when you click on the link, you'll be able to see yourself. She shows a panel of Metal Overlord from one of the first issues of the IDW Sonic comic, which would go against the mandate that was, I guess, put out there, that he couldn't be used. And I'll get into this in a moment, but it seems like CrystalMaiden, and along with others, is very suspicious about something when it comes to those. Continuing on, and I quote CrystalMaiden 77, that is. I don't see why him calling it Master Overlord instead would be distinct enough that he'd be allowed to get away with this, as it clearly being okay, let me reread that, because obviously she typed she obviously hit the wrong keys on some of these. Let me reread that, and I quote, I don't see why calling him let me reread that, hold on, and I quote, I don't see why him calling it Master Overlord instead would be distinct enough that he'd be allowed to get away with this, as it clearly be violating the spirit of the rule, if not the latter, I should say, if not the latter. He's still clearly Metal Overlord, to the point where I read his name as such most of the time out of boredom, with seeing the same thing again. You can't just call a Superman identical character Shrumpman and claim you own him. And this is essentially Shrump Metal Overlord. Oh, I found a loophole. Or basically, let me read that. Let me read that part. She says, you can't just call a Superman identical character Shrumpaman and claim you own him. This is essentially Shrump Metal Overlord. Oh, I found a loophole. Is a pretty convenient excuse and would be a very easy lie. And what she's getting at there is, we see the appearance of Metal Overlord, who is the last boss character in Sonic Heroes. We see Metal Overlord show up here in the IDW comics, like I said. And basically what she's pointing out is that Ian Flynn decides, from her point of view, that the only way he can get around not using Metal Overlord is to rename it Master Overlord. And obviously, if I'm Sega and I see that, I'm like, okay, we'll let you have that one, but don't pull that kind of crap again. Which would explain why we haven't seen Overlord, Master Overlord, Metal Overlord that much anymore, because apparently Sega let him get away with that one, but they probably reprimanded him by saying don't do it again. But yeah, her basically calling Ian Flynn out and saying that, just because you changed the name doesn't mean it's not the same character because it is, and that you're violating the rule. Again, a link will be provided down below so you guys can check it out. Or check out the actual article with the pictures and everything. Last but not least, and I quote, "Also, remember that supposed mandate that Sonic must always win? How do you explain the Metal Virus arc being more than one issue then? Sonic must always win, even if Eggman does, and she capitalized the word does, get the upper hand for a short period. Sonic has to immediately overcome him in a subquistic comic. And yet, whenever Sonic's friends were turned into Zombots, they didn't get immediately turned back to normal in the next issue, and Sonic had the Metal Virus trying to infect him the entire arc, and it took until the final issue in the arc to get rid of the Metal Virus on Eggman. It's not like right after Eggman's first dumped the virus, Sonic stopped him from doing that the next issue forever." And again, I'll provide a link down below. But what she's getting at here is another supposed mandate that was put out by Sega, according to Ian Flynn, that Sonic always has to win, that he cannot lose to Eggman. Like, okay, you can give Eggman the upper hand for an issue or two, but then in that third or fourth or even second issue of that multi-part story, Sonic has to overcome Eggman, destroy whatever device, or in this case, virus, liquid virus, whatever that he's using to try to conquer the world, and restore everybody back to normal. Or at least in some cases, the next issue, restore one of the friends back to normal from being a Zombot. A good example of this kind of happening in a way is with the crossover between Sonic and Mega Man, the first one, that where we saw Tails become Tails Man, but then immediately in the next issue, Sonic was able to restore him. And that even though it took a couple of issues, he was still able to do the same thing for his friends afterwards, of course with the help of Mega Man, but he was still able to restore them. So yeah, she does have a point when you really think about it. She does have a point that if that was the case, if that mandate was legit, then the Metal Virus wouldn't have lasted that long. And this is where, as I mentioned earlier, fans like CrystalMaiden 77 and others are very suspicious about these mandates that Ian Flynn, comes out and says Sega has put on the table for them to follow when it comes to doing the comic, whether it was the IDW comic, or whether it's the IDW comic currently, or it was the Archie Sonic comic. These are mandates that, as Ian put it, Sega put on the table for them to follow. And according to CrystalMaiden, it doesn't seem like they're doing exactly that. It seems like they're getting away, with breaking every mandate, that they can. So she finds it, and she's not the only one. She's not the only one, but, because there are others that see this as well. But she and many others feel that it's very suspicious that, you have Sega put these mandates out to follow, yet you have Ian Flynn and to an extent the artist, and even to an extent Evan Stanley, breaking these mandates and going, against them. It makes them wonder if maybe Ian Flynn just made up these mandates so that people wouldn't pressure him or want him to go in a direction they feel is more appropriate. I mean, CrystalMaiden 77 says, she's right now had enough of this whole plot line going on in IDW Comics, from the Metal Virus to what's currently happened with Bell and all that. And she feels that the more fan-oriented, fan-created comics like Sonic the Continuation, the Archie Sonic Online, places like that, comics like that are more acceptable and enjoyable to read than what is going on right now with the IDW comics, courtesy of Ian Flynn and Evan Stanley. She feels it's more that the fan-made, fan-oriented comics are the best way to go, because it's fans understanding what fans want to see, and not trying to be something that fans don't particularly want to see at all, and feel is hypocritical if it's going against and breaking the mandates that were put in front of them, by Sega in the first place. Now, whether or not we find out whether or not that Ian Flynn did make up these mandates, and lied about the entire, situation of Sega, saying these are the mandates they put down just so he could, avoid, fans getting on him about certain things. If we ever find that out, I can tell you, if we ever find out that's true, I should say, I can tell you honestly right now, that Ian Flynn, you think he gets criticized right now? You think he gets criticized for being a hypocrite right now? We find out the truth about that. We find out whether or not, he lied about these mandates being from Sega, and these are just things he made up himself. Then whatever fan support he has right now still, that's going to go away. And nobody, not the fans, and not even any comic publishers, not even IDW is going to want to trust him anymore. Because he lied. And that's a fact. That's a fact, no matter, that's a fact, and some people may or may not admit to. But that's a fact, and that's the truth. But, yeah, if these mandates are what CrystalMaiden 77 and others like her feel are exactly what they believe they are, and that's, false, not true whatsoever, because each and every one of them have been broken. And then along with the fact that you put on top the situation to where she points out all these Pender concepted ideas, or ideas we had seen Ken Penders bring to life during the Archie run, that are essentially his creation and his own, and currently under his ownership. You put on top of the fact that you have Ian Flynn, doing that with the stories in the IDW books, using the Pender concepts. You have to wonder, what else is he trying? You have to wonder, with the CrystalMaiden and others that point this out are correct about, possibly correct about. You have to wonder what else Ian has had in mind, or does have in mind, for the book that, he says he can't do, but he's going to do it anyway. I mean, she brings up, for example, Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes, the super form of Metal, Neo Metal Sonic. And basically, according to the mandates, he wasn't supposed to use them, and yet we see him, and the way he gets around it is by calling him Master Overlord, not Metal Overlord. And it's like, seriously? Who are you trying to kid? Who are you trying to kid? It's like, basically, it's like with wrestling. WWE at times has gone down the route of, going that old school direction of when a wrestler is fired in storyline, they come back under a mask and under a different name, if not similar name to the real one, and stuff like that. Well, basically, in storylines and wrestling at times, this has happened. For example, when Dusty Rhodes got removed from the NWA WCW territory, what did he do? He came back under the disguise of the Midnight Rider, or the original Midnight Rider, to get even, against the Four Horsemen and everything. Even though it was obviously, to the fans and to the Horsemen, it was obviously Dusty under the mask. The same with Hulk Hogan. When Hulk Hogan got sent home by Vince McMahon, in 2003, I believe, to sit at home and work, basically sit at home for the rest of his pay, his paycheck that he would be getting, his duration of his contract. What did Hogan do in storyline? He decided in storyline that basically he's not going to sit at home. He's going to come back, and he'll come under the disguise of Mr. America, even though you could tell it's Hogan, from the mustache and even the eyes, that you could see through the holes in it, through the eye holes and everything. You could tell it's Hogan, also by the build. The fact is, the fact is he came back as a different character, even though you knew it was him. The same with John Cena. When John Cena did something similar after being fired by Wade Barrett of the Nexus in 2010, he came back as Juan Cena. He put a mask on and tried to act like he was a luchador that was basically a Mexican version, luchador version of John Cena, even though it was John Cena. You see what I'm saying? So what she's getting at here with, Ian basically bringing in Metal Overlord but naming him Master Overlord, that doesn't cut it. That doesn't cut it unless he lied about the mandate. He lied about it, and he was always able to use Metal Overlord, but he wanted to do it the way he wanted and not the way fans wanted. Who knows? But again, when you read what she has to say here about the concept, the Ken Penders concept ideas that she feels were utilized in the IDW book by Flynn and somewhat to an extent Evan Stanley, and then you take a look at some of the other things, the mandates that he, and to an extent Evan, along with the artist, broke, and when it came to bringing in certain characters and things and designs, it makes you very suspicious of whether or not these mandates or these reasonings that he puts out for not being able to do this or that or whatever are nothing but lies. And he's just basically saying, hey, look, I have to say that to these fans because if I tell them, yeah, I could use this, they're going to want me to do it this way and that way, and I want to do it my way. So you have to wonder. You have to wonder whether or not, not Evan, but you have to wonder whether or not that, CrystalMaiden and fans that, support her in, backing her up in this, you have to wonder whether or not they have a point. And like I said, whether or not down the line Ian Flynn will come out and just admit the truth that, yeah, I lied about this, but I did it because of this reason. We'll see. But again, I'll provide a link in the description as well as at the end of the video here so you guys can check it out yourself. But really, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below. Live chat during the premiere. What do you think about it? What do you think about CrystalMaiden pointing these obvious these obvious moments out and all that, concepts, breaking of mandates and stuff? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about that? Comment down below. Live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Check out my Teespring store. Check me out at BW Rosas Discussions, I should say, at all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Check me out on Vimeo at BW Rosas as well. And really, guys, that's as well as check me out at Patreon at Brian Walmer BW Rosas as well to help support me there and enhance the brand that I'm trying to create. But let me know what let me know what your thoughts are. And CrystalMaiden, if you watch this, I'd like to hear from you on it. Maybe reply and let me know and others why you feel this way. And that's all I'm going to say, guys. So till next time, I will talk to you all later.